Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the 32nd annual Phyllis Schlafly Collegians Leadership Summit. Of course, I know we have people of all ages on with us tonight. Obviously, a lot of college students from around the country. We saw the registrations pouring in, lots of different graduation years, different universities and colleges, different campuses, different states, and a lot of different majors, too. And I tell you what, the reason we're here is to fulfill the legacy of Phyllis Schlafly. For 31 years, this event has gone on every year. In some form or fashion. Back in the glory years, there'd be several hundred students here in Washington, D.C., with congressmen and experts, authors, leaders, and lots of fantastic folks that were building in the next generation. So now we're going to do the same thing, but also we are in a very unique moment in American history. Here in 2025, the next 3.5, really 1.5 years that we have with the Trump administration, with a Republican Congress and Senate, House and Senate, there are some golden opportunities, and that's why this year we are talking about building America's golden age. It's not just time to fight the bad administration or to do a few good things. It is time to fundamentally renew the constitutional republic that we once had and to fundamentally restore the United States of America, what it means to be an American. That is what the program's about this evening. I'm here with my cohort, Mason Mohan, from the Phyllis Schlafly Center. We're going to be guiding you throughout the evening here, and I appreciate, Mason, you being with us. We're going to have a good time. And our first guest, none other than Mr. Ed Martin, Eagle Ed Martin.
There you go.
That just started as a Twitter handle, and then it became a legendary nickname, didn't it?
I think so. Yeah. You know, we give all credit to Phyllis, right? And
right.
Great to be with you guys, and great to be with the viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Mason and Ryan doing a great job. You know, as I was sitting here, Ryan, you said you wanted to have me make a few comments on Phyllis and her bringing us together. You know, it was 1981 when Phyllis opened an office in Washington, D.C. Ronald Reagan had won for president. She didn't move to D.C. Instead, she had a presence in Washington, D.C. And I remember when I would talk to her about that time, she maintained and a few years later started the Collegians program, but she knew she wanted to influence what was going on. And especially when Ronald Reagan was in office, she knew that the way to do that was to be communicating the values, the positions, the policies, but also cultivate the relationships. And I remember, and now I'm sort of living it, she would have people that worked for her, volunteers, sometimes they were the young staff in her office, that would end up in government in some way and end up in service in some way. And now, as we know, a year ago, I was sitting here talking to our collegians and talking to the people viewing about our work and about the things that were happening and the important issues of the election. And now here we are, and I'm working in the Trump administration. It's been amazing. I can tell you that Phyllis cared so much about the relationships, but really cared about this country, right? She knew the people, she knew the values, and making that a part of what's going on. I know she's really proud of the work that continues with the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles and also all the work that's happening with the Trump administration. You know, I keep coming back to when Donald Trump came to her funeral, and Mason, you weren't there with us then, but Ryan and I were there. It was extraordinary. President Trump, then candidate Trump, came to that funeral in the cathedral in St. Louis. And before we started, he had a few words. And I remember John and Andy, Bruce Schlafly were all up at the front of the church on the altar, really. And President Trump, I don't remember a lot of that speech, but we've published it, of course, a number of times. And the headline, when John Schlafly sort of edited that, was, "She never wavered. She never wavered." Now, Donald Trump meant that she never wavered in her support of him. Because there were lots of people that wanted her to change her mind and wanted to make arguments about. But for those of us that knew her and see her work and her legacy, she never wavered in her love for America. She never wavered in her trust in the Constitution. She never wavered in her faith in God. And that had a transformative effect on the country. And whether you go look at the readings on phyllisschlafly.com or you go and look at her books, you can see, or many videos and audio. You can see the what she teaches and the impact. So great to have people together, and great to be with you guys. And I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's my launch point. You know, people know you and your background. You've run through a lot, and of course, the 10 years with us at the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles,
Right.
A whole decade whole decade we
Crazy.
worked together.
Crazy.
But I mean, from, chief of staff to Missouri governor, Missouri GOP chairman, RNC member, president of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. Now, you had a very brief, exciting stint as the interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia.
That's true.
But now, though, associate deputy attorney general, director of the weaponization working group, and the lead U.S. Pardon attorney, U.S. attorney for pardons.
Yep.
So if you would, give us a rundown. Those two things, particularly the weaponization group and the pardon office.
I have a hard time keeping a job, it looks like, because actually President Trump was so honored. He announced that I was going to be chief of staff to OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. And if you watch closely, you see that Russ Vought is the most important figure that nobody really knows his name. OMB, Office of Management and Budget, is all the wallet of the country, of the budget, of the government. And DOJ was actually adjacent to that. So from about November 15th until the day before the inauguration, I was helping Russ Vought staff up the OMB and trying to come up with a strategy. It wasn't my strategy, it was Russ's, but trying to get the people to be able to make sure that we got this incredible budget. And, Russ Vought did an interview, I'll try to post it, where he explained the big, beautiful bill. He said, everybody's getting it wrong. He said, this is going to be so good for the economy. It's going to look like this, this, and this. He summarized it really well. Anyway, so I did that. And then the day before the inauguration, I got a phone call. And one of President Trump's senior staff said, can you come down to the old Trump Hotel, the Waldorf Astoria, it's called now, and we want to talk to you about a different job. And I said, what do you mean? Tomorrow is the inauguration. I'm going to be landing with the OMB as chief of staff. What are you talking about? And they said, well, we need to talk to you. So I go down there and they say, we want you to be the U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. If you do the job right, you'll have 120 days and you might not get confirmed because you're going to get a lot of attention. And I was like, I'll do it. I want to do it. I always love that job, actually. So when Donald Trump was sworn in as president, raised his right hand and was sworn in, I was chief of staff to OMB for 2 hours and 22 minutes. And then I was sworn in as U.S. attorney. So I vacated that job. And as you mentioned, for 120 days, I was U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia. We had an initiative the president wanted us to make the streets safe. We dropped crime at 25% in just over 100 days. And then we also had this initiative to try to focus on protecting America, whether it was the terrorism threats, the Chinese agents. There was a Chinese agent working in the Fed who was indicted and arrested. And so it was awesome. I also took on Chuck Schumer and all these people that were trying to do things that weren't, I think, appropriate. And it was awesome. And ultimately, I did not get confirmed by the Senate. I would have had the votes had I gotten to the floor, but I was jammed up in committee, and President Trump said, we're going to stop that fight. I've got things I've got to do. And he put me in these positions you mentioned. So, what's great is Donald Trump has such a vision for putting the citizens of the country first. And now I'm in two spots. The pardon attorney is helping to we help to analyze who deserves a pardon or clemency. And then also this weaponization working group, which is really the government abuses during the Biden administration have been extraordinary. And President Trump and Pam Bondi have given me this direction. It's been awesome. And we're in the middle of every major investigation you can picture of the Biden administration abusing the citizens, whether it's the school board parents that were targeted, the Catholics that were targeted, J6, Jack Smith, Fani Willis, whistleblowers, and we're working like cats and dogs as fast as we can to get to the bottom of all this. So it's really, really been incredible. And I give credit to the president for letting us do this.
Yeah, so we want to talk about the weaponization working group a little bit because for years during the Biden administration, and you were pointing out over and over again, traditional Catholics are being targeted, January 6ers, and now you're in a position to do something about that. So what can you tell us about the way that weaponization was used during the Biden administration and what you're doing now to kind of right those wrongs?
Well, first of all, Mason, you're exactly right. It was everywhere. And what we discovered is we have some investigators, we have some lawyers, and we're sort of trying to be systematic, but also trying to find ways into the conversation. So, for example, one of the things that Attorney General Bondi assigned us to do was look at how J6 prosecutions targeted the citizens, and she was very explicit about that. So we've looked at how January 6th, not defendants, not convicts, were put on, for example, the terrorism watch list. And you say, well, what was the standard to put them on? What was the criteria? And basically, there was none. It was, we don't like you, we're putting you on the list. That's an example of government being weaponized. If you had criteria for terrorism, right? And you say, oh, we got a terrorism watch list. I'm not a big fan of these lists in general, but you would say, oh, what's the criteria? They clearly were just using government against people. So you can take that idea, and it's fairly mundane, right? It's a list. But that impact on people, they couldn't get on planes, they couldn't get loans, and by the way, we shared that information with other nations. So suddenly in other places, you're going to be targeted, all for no due process yet, all for being targeted as J6. So that's an example, maybe a small one, of how we can get into the questions surrounding weaponization. And another example, we're digging into you mentioned the Catholics. I know, Mason, your faith's important to you. The Catholic targeting by the FBI, they made a memo. We say, oh, well, there's a memo. It was in Richmond, if you remember. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out it wasn't just in Richmond. It was distributed all across the country. And we found that out by looking at the distribution lists and seeing, and it wasn't really just a Richmond memo. It was a memo that was coming from DOJ, broadly speaking, from Maine justices, how people say it. So, we're trying to be as systematic as we can and trying to identify what happened, who did it, and who was hurt. And that's the sort of methodology. And again, notwithstanding all the noise out there, Attorney General Bondi has set us loose on this, and I have never had a request that I didn't get a yes from her and her staff or her office to go charging down these paths. And sometimes, like the whistleblowers, the Biden administration really destroyed whistleblowers. So you're a whistleblower and you say, this in the IRS, this isn't going right, or in the FBI, this isn't going right. And the Biden administration not only fired you, they took away your clearances, they took away a chance to have livelihood. And so we've gone back and rebuilt how this happened and constructed how do we fix that? Not only fix it for the future, which is important, but fix it for the people that were wronged. And by the way, what do we do with the stuff that the whistleblowers found? We have one case that a whistleblower identified that the Biden administration refused to take. It's a slam dunk case, and it has to do with China, it has to do with big money, and it has to do with certain family that you can picture in political life. It was left on the side of the road because why? Well, we're going to find out, right? And that's the kind of stuff we're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah, and really what you did was you just hit one of the next nails on the head there, is that there's two reasons for this. And that's why I'm kind of curious. The Office of Pardon Attorney, I think people just think, oh, a president pardons friends and associates on his way out the door. Well, the Trump administration came in with a bang when it came to pardons. I mean, not only 1,500, J6, but then there have been a few high-profile ones since then. The FACE Act. And there's been some others since then. I would say first, real quick, what's the methodology behind that moving forward? Are there more things that y'all have on the horizon? Or obviously you can't tell us everything, but...
Yeah, so President Trump, I'll position it differently. President Trump, when he became president, he was a president unlike any other. We can all see that, right? He's just different in terms of almost everything he does, including, as a conservative, governing with what I would call a great sense of mercy. He actually used the pardon power, which is a plenary power in the Constitution. He used it more with an eye towards how do we fix things that were not just. So Alice Johnson is famous now. She's the pardon czar. She was pardoned during the first Trump term. She had served, I think, 20 years of a 30-year sentence for basically making big mistakes when she was young. Well, 21 years, I think it was, is enough time. And President Trump was like, let's let her out. She got out, and now she's an iconic leader talking about how you get second chances. President Trump did that. The First Step Act during the first Trump term, as a conservative guy, when it was first proposed, I was like, that sounds a little bit too much. Like, I mean, I don't know. I like being nice, but it turns out almost universally, with only a few exceptions, it's worked really well. It's let people get out faster if they behave well and gives them more opportunities. So now you become the pardon attorney. You become the pardon attorney. You say, what's the vision? President Trump's vision is to right injustices and create opportunities for people, kind of like second chance. So sometimes it's somebody famous, the Chrisleys got pardoned, but a lot of times it's people that Alice Johnson and my office found that are, they got a 30-year sentence for possession of drugs. They've served 20 years. They're teaching in the Sunday school. They're, well behaved. And you say, wouldn't this guy or gal be a good person to get out and have a life again? And so that's the kind of thing that's going on. It also, as you point out, with this president in a second term, he's just got a different feel for it, how he's thinking of things. And I didn't realize that so many people paid attention to pardons. I'm learning about that. And, one thing I think Phyllis Schlafly would have appreciated, Congressman Steve Stockman, he got a commutation last time. A number of people were targeted for political reasons, weaponized government. And that's been, I think, also a big part of what President Trump has said, because he lived it, is how do we make sure that those people that were targeted by Biden, by Obama, have a chance to get out from under.
So speaking of pardons, if we look at some of the pardons during the last administration, the signatures on some of them look a little bit too nice. And on some of them, they look a little bit messier. So what do we know about the use of an auto pen during Biden's administration, and why would it matter if he was using the auto pen?
Well, this is really important. I mean, first, let me say, Chairman Comer up on Capitol Hill, the House, has done an awesome job on oversight. He's been digging into this. He's kind of been the lead dog, although the Justice Department in various areas has played a role. But I keep telling people, an auto pen is not improper in and of itself. It's a tool. It's like a pen. Before you had a pen, you had to be present and say, I say this. I'm not sure that's true, but you get my point. It's like it's a tool. The problem is two things. We now have the Democrats admitting that Joe Biden was not competent for a large portion of his presidency. That's what they said, not us, right? Jake Tapper and all these sources, hundreds of sources. In fact, you'll talk with Mike Howell later. Mike Howell has done a good job of reconstructing and looking closely at what Jake Tapper and his co-author said, which was there are hundreds of people who are firsthand witnesses to a president that was not competent. Now, if you're not competent, you can't use the tool, right? You can't use the tool, the auto pen. So you have a couple of things. One, we now have testimony from Neera Tanden, I think I say her name, that she was running the auto pen. She never interacted with, very rarely interacted. Weeks and maybe 6-8 weeks would go by before she interacted with the president. Okay, but what's the system? Like, what is the paper trail that shows how this works? Because when you're president of the United States, if they use your signature, even on the auto pen, they could give lots of money away. They could bind us in treaties. They could give pardons. So what we have is, I think, one of the greatest scandals in the history of our country, that the Biden administration hid the competence of the president. Whether he was competent or not, I don't know, but they certainly have said, they've brought into question. And now they have said, two areas to look at, Mason. On December 23rd of 2024, we had the unprecedented conduct by the Biden administration to effectively commute almost every death penalty case in America. Now, they left two of them up in Florence, Colorado. Many of us think because they didn't want to be accused of having actually abrogated the law, which is what would have happened. But the rest of them they did. It's not clear to me that that was a policy that Joe Biden, he was for the death penalty his whole career, even when he was with Obama, at the end of the Obama second term, where there were calls for getting rid of commuting death. No. So suddenly something changed, right? So it brings into question auto pen, all of it. And then at the very end of the Biden administration, we had conduct that raises questions even before you have competence. So, for example, Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, said, at the very end of this administration, we had a transfer of $6-point-something billion to a nonprofit. That's never been done before. Hold on, that's behavior that's outside of the norm. Can we ask some questions? It seemed reasonable to me. I worked with Administrator Zeldin on it, actually, as U.S. attorney. So I think that was important. But also as to these pardons, we've never had pardons retroactive for 14 years for everything under the sun. It wasn't Hunter Biden stole something, pardon him. It was anything he ever did. Again, the power is plenary. You can do it, or you can argue that you can do it. But the question is, so outside of the norm. And done with an auto pen. Well, actually, Hunter's was not done with an auto pen. I think his was done. But everyone else was getting these pardons. So all of the people on the J6 committee, all the staff and members are pardoned. By the way, consultants weren't pardoned. There's a whole bunch of consultants that anyway. But so the breakdown of the Biden administration on this issue is something that Congressman Comer, Chairman Comer is looking at, and the Department of Justice is too.
Well, see, that's where my next question is. So what's being looked at? Obviously, there's active investigations, which you can and can't talk about. But I think the American people looking from the outside in say this can't just be a matter of, well, the bad people are gone. The unselect committee was disbanded. The Biden administration is gone. Let's just move on. Conservatives often rule that way. We get in, we govern in a magnanimous way. And I think a lot of us are looking at from the outside in saying, no, people need to go to jail. People need to be uncovered because this can't ever be allowed to happen again. We literally suspended the office of the presidency. We did not have an elected leader almost for 4 years, you could argue. There has to be some sort of accountability for this to ensure it never happens again. Is that something that you hope is coming in the near
look,
future?
it is coming, and it's coming every day. And I would just say it differently. I would characterize it this way. As U.S. Attorney, I experienced this. It takes a long time to indict people because we believe in the law and due process. We're not like, when I do the weaponization analysis of J6, what's stunning to me is the rabid nature of the conduct that was done by prosecutors, done even the way judges interacted. You're like, these people don't seem to be balanced. They're not respecting due process. They're not respecting how things work. So we're law abiders, right? I sometimes wish we didn't, but we're going to play by the rules. And so it's slower than I'd like. I agree with that. But two things. One, we should name and shame. People got mad at me when I say that. We should name people that have done this. The people that have done this should be named and identified. The public does have a right to know that. And when they can, they should be indicted or civilly held accountable. Whatever avenues we have, we should hold them accountable in every way we can. And I do think we're doing that. Look, again, it's hard for people that want to see that they have an image of what they think could happen. And they watched the mistreatment of American citizens under Biden and Obama and others. You know, the dawn raids on Roger Stone's house with CNN present. We want to see us do the same thing. I don't want to see that. I do want to see arrest and accountability, and we are seeing it. We are seeing it a lot, and we're in the middle of it, and we're going to keep seeing it. And you know, I will say this one thing that I've observed: we, the people that love the Constitution, honor the forms. The president has never said disregard the courts. He's always told us, and Pam Bondi, we're going to obey the courts because that's our system, even when the courts are absolutely counter to the Constitution. We're going to play by the rules because otherwise we're not America. Sometimes you say, this is a trap because we're stuck in an Article 3 maze that slows us down, and every day we're losing daylight. And I feel that, but the choice is to go lawless with them or to do what we're doing and try to keep pushing as best we can. And again, I think I told you at the beginning, there's something that was done wrong. We should name the problem, the truth, and the people, right? And hold them accountable in any way we meaningfully can. And then we also should be aware of the victims. And I think the victims thing is also as important because I'm on the receiving end now of thousands and thousands of people saying to me, I was victimized this way by weaponized government. I was victimized this way by, government intrusions into my life. And we're like, wow, how do we handle this? And half the time, just listening to their plea changes how they relate to our nation, and we got to do that.
Well, and that actually leads me to a follow-up question.
Yep.
You just mentioned it there. You talked a little bit about James Comer and Congress, what they're doing. And by the way, I'm very happy. There's at least a trifecta of good old Missouri boys up there between you and Will Scharf and John Sauer, who has been killing it over at the Supreme Court. Here's my question. From your view from the inside, because you have now been involved in a lot of big fights, both in and out of government. Thank you, by the way, that we don't have to primary Tom Tillis anymore. My words, not the words of Ed
I take
Martin.
no credit for that. But
we're going to give you something.
Not unhappy
give you a little
with
bit
how
of
it turned out, but
you've been involved in a lot of this. What is your view on the relationship now between the branches? Because we have just gone through a lot of major friction points, at least between we the people, conservative media, and Congress over the big, beautiful bill. But when it comes to your interaction with Congress and also inside the courts, how do you see this working? Are we getting to a cohesive place, or is there going to be set up a long friction between the three branches the next 3.5 years?
Well, I think it's inevitable that there's going to be tension because that's the system. But we learned from Phyllis Schlafly and John Schlafly, of course, our colleague, and Phyllis wrote The Supremacists, right? She wrote about this problem. Is that what it's called, The Supremacists? What was the Supremacists? And she wrote a lot about the judges. She wrote a lot about Congress. What boggles my mind is when people expect that the executive branch should somehow be independent from the guy elected, right? I mean, the guy was elected president. It's his branch, not some bureaucrat or career person. It's his branch, right? So that's one thing. And I think that, look, the judges right now, Article 3 judges, the balance is off, right? They think that they're able to do things that they're not. The Supreme Court, on the other hand, I think is reining them back in and saying, hold on a second, you're not going to have nationwide injunctions and all. So again, I'm confident that the Constitution will hold. I do think that, programs like this, what Phyllis Schlafly Eagles do, what John Schlafly continues, you guys are doing, and ultimately what Phyllis taught was the Constitution is our guide. And if we stick to that, don't amend it with, conventions, don't get crazy, stick to it, I think we're in a great place. So I do think it's going to be a constant tension. I think the fun tension to me is when our own party, for example, in the sense that one of the parties in charge, one party is working against the same party in different branches. It really brings to bear the questions around, for example, when there was discussion about the War Powers Act and the war powers. I think that's very fruitful when one party is debating that and getting to the root of it. And so it's I think it's going to be really, there will be tension, but I'll bet on the Constitution.
I got one question here. I know Mason
Okay.
has a wrap up. He wants to ask you a question, but from email, Scott over on our email asks, this may be more of your U.S. attorney time, but he asks to you, the Honorable Ed Martin, does current law allow the president to run the District of Columbia? If so, can you describe how that process would work, including how the residents would be represented and funded?
Yeah. So, and I love the District of Columbia. One of the great sort of the regret I have about not being able to be U.S. attorney is I was doing ride-alongs into the district, and it's like St. Louis City. I lived in the city the whole time I was there when I was a student, then with my family. I guess I lived in the county for a year and a half at one point, but I love the city of St. Louis. When I was election board chairman, I'd go around to all these places. In the district, I started doing ride-alongs with a detective, and so I was in the rough parts of town. I was in the Tony parts of town, and I was learning what was going on, and we were trying to figure out the problems, and I really liked that. I did learn about that. Look, the home rule of D.C. could be taken away by the president in an executive action, but only for a limited time, and then the Congress would have to act. So the Congress gave the District of Columbia this government form that they have. They would have to take it back. The president could do it for a short time, I think 30 days, and then 30 days, maybe a couple times in a row. It would be a dramatic gesture that would ultimately still end up in Congress to figure it out. So, but I do think there's major problems. The District of Columbia is about 750,000 people, and the school system is not good enough. It's just not. The neighborhoods are dealing with pop-up marijuana shops that just devastate the community. They have a problem with guns because my predecessor for 4 years of Biden wouldn't prosecute gun cases at the level that I think he should have. We have a juvenile problem where the juveniles in the city are not, this happens in St. Louis, by the way, and Chicago and Philly. It's a problem of juveniles where they're 15 and 16 and they're being treated like kids when they're acting like criminal adults. And the generally Democrat-led cities are doing that. And that's a real problem. It's a problem for the kids, by the way, 15 and 16-year-olds not learning good behavior and becoming really bad adult criminals. So it's to your email, it could be done. It's hard to picture the president doing it right now. I think it's more likely that we can influence the city government through the appropriations process. And I saw the mayor doing better on a bunch of stuff. Look, she got rid of Black Lives Matter Plaza, which was an eyesore and an affront. She got rid of it. She cracked down on the homelessness, which we asked her to do, and that's something she controls, and she did that, and she actually changed her rules on it. So the behavior can be modified, but it's a problem.
So to wrap up, like Ryan said before, our theme for this Collegians is building America's golden age. As Trump said at the beginning of his inauguration speech, this is the golden age of America. So we want to know what to you is the number one priority to get done towards building the golden age of America within the next 1.5 years or 3.5 years.
Well, the president and Attorney General Bondi challenged me in the work I'm doing to restore the integrity and the honor of the system, the Justice Department system on weaponization. I think that's, for my work, that's the sort of number one thing in terms of giving people confidence that the system works for everyone, that the people who did the things that were problematic have been held accountable and identified, and that we're going to go forward knowing what happened. But I would say on the golden age, I'm glad that you have framed it that way. The golden age is what Phyllis Schlafly saw in Donald Trump. She saw a guy who could lead on policies that gave people meaning in their life and their family. And so when you say America first, it's not because we like us better. It's because We care about our family before we care about our neighbors. We care about our neighbors before we care about foreigners. This is the human, and Donald Trump has taught us that in a way that gives us confidence to say, I want more for myself and for my family and for my neighbors and for my country. It's an extraordinary thing. Phyllis saw it in him. She gave an interview on a Friday afternoon in December of 2015, and she was asked by a reporter for WND about Donald Trump, and she said, I believe he may be a last hope for America. And my point about what Phyllis taught was Trump, brings hopefulness. He brings an optimism that makes it possible so you can get out of jail and be the White House pardon czar. You can, take on tariffs, and everyone said it'll crash the economy, and it's succeeding, right? One after another, the optimism transforms us. And I'll finish with this last story. I was with the President Trump at Bedminster Country Club with January 6 folks, and there was some 3 boys, children of a guy that was in jail, one of the J6 defendants. And I said to the president, hey, over there, those tables are full of the kids, the children of the people in jail. And he said, bring them over. So they were coming over to say hello to him and get a picture and all. And he saw these 3 boys, 3 brothers, and he said to them that their life is upside down. Dad is gone. He was the breadwinner for the family. And it's terrible. The 3 boys, teenage boys, life is just terrible. And he looks at them and he says, you're going to have great lives. You're going to have great lives. And then he paused and he said, trust me, your lives are going to be great. Now, you're a 15-year-old kid, a 13-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid, and you hear that from Donald Trump, the president of the United States, or the former president. It can change your life. The golden age is about believing in ourselves and believing in our Constitution, believing in that there's nothing wrong. Remember they told us if we do, Ryan will remember even better, we were working on it. They told us if you deport people, it's going to crash the economy, right? It's going to be terrible. You know what's happening is people are believing that the rule of law matters, and they're believing not that we don't like people, but that we like ourselves enough to go do this. And we're doing it. And we're doing it one neighborhood at a time, one block at a time. And it's awesome. It's wonderful. And it's hopeful. And I think that's what the golden age is.
That's a great punch to close it.
Yeah. Thanks,
Ed,
guys. It's great to be with you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. God bless you, and we will continue to pray for you.
That's
we miss you.
important.
It's fun to have you in the hot seat instead of the interview.
That's right.
seat.
This is tough, man.
Fun to
It's
do
tough.
this again sometime.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, man. Folks, we're going to continue. Take a quick break here. We've got Mr. Garrett Ziegler on the other side. Just a few minutes. We'll be right back here on Phyllis Schlafly Collegians 32. Back in a minute.